Hello, Lucas Roboke here with another AngularJS screencast. Today we are going to go over some Chrome developer tricks that I've picked up that have been really helpful for me to not only debug my application, but to actually make changes to the application state under the hood on the fly, as well as see what is actually going on. And so even my understanding of Angular has, really kind of increased by using some of these things and being able to introspect the application at runtime. So what I have here is a sticky note application that I wrote where it's just a simple application that you can add a note and then you can add it and delete it. And so when I was putting this application together, one of the things that I was having problems with is where does a DOM element, what scope does it live in precisely, and what is the relationship of that scope to the rest of the application all the way up onto root scope. And so I was like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to quickly see all the scopes on the page and how they relate to each other? Well, it turns out there is. So let's go over here to the developer tools and let's add a new element. And how this works is when the Angular compilation process happens is it goes through and adds some classes to the DOM that you can then go through and kind of augment these styles to do some really neat things visually. So let's create a new class called ngScope. Let's add a border to this. That's 1 pixel red solid like so, and here we go. Is now we have the root scope, then we have kind of these outer scopes, and then we have the inner scopes within them. And so now I know why this is happening, is that the outer scopes is being created in the ng repeat directive that I'm using, and then the inner scope is being created when the directive is being created and added to the DOM. So now I can see very quickly what's happening. Let's add one more style. It's also useful sometimes to see what is actually being bound to scope. And so you can do that using ng binding border, and I'm going to give this an orange, and let's just go back because I want this to be solid. There we go. And so now you can see that the text in here is actually being bound to an item on the scope. So that's pretty handy. Let's take it a step further and actually look at the application state, the scope, and the controller and whatnot. So let's go here and let's grab an element from the DOM. So I'm going to say var element equals Angular element, and just using the standard jQuery selector syntax, we're going to grab a div that I know exists called notes. And let's see what this looks like. So you just basically have a DOM element here and its children elements. Let's grab the scope off of that. So let's say element, and let's see what this looks like. So then you can dig in here and start to see some interesting things. You can see what it's watching. So for instance, here is the actual JSON array of objects that exist. You can see what the parent scope is, and you can see that, oh, well, the parent scope has two methods called add note and delete note, and we're actually going to use one of those in just a moment. And this also has a method called delete note. And so let's actually call one of these and see what happens. So let's go scope delete note, and let's we're going to put an ID. I happen to know that it's 1. So we've called this and nothing has actually happened. That's because the application isn't aware that something from the outside has modified it. So what you need to do is you need to let it know. And so that's pretty easy, is you just call digest. Now watch, the first node over here is going to disappear, and there we go. So let's actually grab the parent scope of this, and let's just say scope parent. And remember that add note method that we saw. So let's just check this out real quick. You can see it's called add note, and you're just adding in a note title. So let me just go here. Let's say parent add note, command note. And remember, we got to call digest to let the application know that we've done something. And voila, there we go. One other bit of information worth looking at just real quick is what controller actually owns and is controlling the style element. So you can just go var controller equals element, and like so. And oh, here we go. It's the notebook controller. Very cool. And so you're not going to see a lot in the controller because it's only responsible for setting the initial state of scope and augmenting it by adding methods to it. And so there we have it, just a few techniques to see how the scope hierarchy exists within the application, what is being bound to the scope, as well as manually call some methods on scope and kind of start to manipulate it and start to play around with it and see what happens in real time. So I hope you've learned a few things. I've had a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.